With these two new Radeon cards that are coming out, it got me thinking, what does the performance look like for AMD's flagship GPU from 4.5 years ago, the Radeon VII? It was a very divisive GPU. It was almost like this paper-launched vaporware GPU that you couldn't really get anywhere, and if you could, it was super expensive. What I wanted to do was I wanted to go back and test it with all of the benchmarks that we usually test our GPUs with in Windows and see what the story is, because I was looking at pricing as well, and the pricing for the Radeon VII is crazy. People are asking way too much for these things. The other thing is I wanted to see what the performance would look like with age, right? Because sometimes with AMD GPUs, they're like fine wine. They get better with age. So yeah, let's see if the same rings true. So come along with me as we find out what the story is with the Radeon VII in 2023. I think this might surprise you with the results here. The Radeon VII was a GPU that AMD released back in February 2019, and it was their last dedicated or discrete Vega GPU. It's got a couple standout features, things like 16 gigs of HBM2 memory, which means the memory performance on it is ridiculous compared to what we see with things even like GDDR6X. But things like HBM2 weren't enough to save the Radeon VII because it kind of came at this weird time when AMD was trying to compete with the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti. And it was also at a time where we were seeing AMD release new Ryzen CPUs every year. And then when we got to Ryzen 3000 CPUs on the same day, we got our first RDNA GPUs. So yeah, this was really the last of what we saw with the Vega lineup of GPUs in terms of the high-end performance. Speaking of the performance, let's take a look at the usual benchmarks that we do here on the channel. I used our regular GPU test bench, which we'll be upgrading later. It's got the i9 12900K, 32 gigs of RAM. Let's start off with 1080p in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the performance is kind of sitting around the same mark that we see with the 6600 XT, which is surprising given where these GPUs were launched in the stack. And actually, I thought the performance would be a bit better for the Radeon VII here, but I mean, this is kind of the trend that we're going to see with the rest of the tests here, so strap yourself in. Next up, we've got Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1440p on high settings. We're seeing GPUs like the A770, and even other GPUs like the 3060 absolutely wipe the floor with the Radeon VII in these tests. So I'll just kind of zoom through this a little bit quicker. We've got 4K as well, and the 4K performance again is actually a little bit better than the 6600 XT. That's to do with VRAM and memory bandwidth as well. And it only just beats out the A770. Let's move on to Unigine Superposition. We'll do the 1080p extreme benchmark here. And this benchmark, even though it's 1080p, is super GPU intensive. What we're seeing here with the Radeon VII is the performance is exactly the same as the 6600 XT. And this is a bit of a trend that we're seeing form with the comparison between the 6600 XT and the Radeon VII. What surprised me here more than anything was the A770 is much quicker with new drivers than it used to be. So yeah, we retested this one and it's very, very interesting. If we move on to 1440p custom, I turn off motion blur and depth of field for this one as well. And I use the optimized 4K texture settings here for this benchmark. And we're seeing the performance here not be too bad. At 1440p with this benchmark and these settings, we're actually quite CPU bound, so that's a bit to do with the 12900K. Lastly, onto Unigine Superposition at 4K optimized. We're seeing the Radeon VII beat out the 6600 XT in this benchmark. This is no surprise here, considering when the Radeon VII launched, they kind of touted it as a 4K 60 GPU, but you know, history dictates what's true and what's not. Let's move on to Cyberpunk 2077. What I do for these tests is we don't use any ray tracing. This GPU doesn't support it anyway, so We're not going to talk about ray tracing. We also use the high preset and FSR 2.1. All these GPUs are running FSR 2.1. Something that we see quite a lot with the 12900K paired with relatively fast GPUs at 1080p, we're completely CPU bottlenecked and 184 FPS. We see figures around this point quite a lot, and 184 FPS for this GPU is quite a lot. So, you know, 1080p is really good, but if we switch over to 1440p where we become GPU bound again, you can see this thing absolutely, what's the word? It's a train wreck. It's a train wreck going off the end of a cliff. What we're seeing here is the frame rate is about half of other GPUs in the same performance tier as the Radeon VII. I think why we're seeing this with stuff like Cyberpunk is the game, even though it was delayed a million times, it's vastly newer than the Radeon VII, and clearly, even with driver optimizations, the engine optimizations need to occur with something like this as well, and I don't think that the Radeon VII is up to the task, especially at 4K. 4K 30 for a GPU with 16 gigs of VRAM and HBM2. I honestly thought the performance would be a lot better, so I'm a little bit disappointed with the 4K performance, but 1080p is fine. While we're speaking about optimization, let's take a look at Horizon Zero Dawn, and here's where it gets really, really interesting. At 1080p, we're getting just 76 frames per second with the same settings that every other GPU was tested in this graph. It is far lower than all the other GPUs that we have tested here. It's insane that it's that bad at 1080p. If we move on up to 1440p, unfortunately, we're seeing more of the same here. The performance is, how can I say it? A little bit disappointing. Lastly, at 4K, 37 frames per second. What can I say? It's not great, but you know, it is what it is. The GPU was definitely not designed to run with games like this. And Horizon Zero Dawn's a good one because even though it's an older title for PlayStation 4, the way it was optimized for PC, you can't really compare the hardware here. So it is a good benchmark for punching holes in performance to see where things are really weak. And that's why we use benchmarks like this, because they're repeatable and they're really reliable and they give us really repeatable results. We run these benchmarks quite a few times to see what the story is. And yeah, the Radeon VII for our regular benchmarks, you know, it's all over the place. Let's look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, a game that I've personally got over 21 days of playtime in. It's crazy. Yes, I know, I'm insane. I've played Modern Warfare a whole lot, but I ran the in-game benchmarks and I did this two ways, and I want to try something as well that I haven't done that I'm going to do with you guys on camera. First of all, when you put a new GPU in, COD's like, hey, your hardware's not the same, do you want to run recommended settings? I was like, okay, let's do the recommended benchmark, because that's kind of how we test GPUs with COD, because I want to see if the game knows what to do with this thing. So let's start off at 1080p. The performance here is a bit all over the place as well. If we compare it to something like the 4060 or 4060 Ti, which were the last two GPUs that I tested with this benchmark, I also wanted to test the GPU with the performance settings as well. And this is using FSR and everything as well. So we're seeing the performance be a little bit closer to a 4060 at 1080p. However, let's move on up to 1440p, just for a more common resolution that we're seeing these days. Now with the 4060, I tested this with FSR because I was curious as well. And these are the results we're seeing for all of these GPUs with FSR, just to even the playing field. And actually at 1440p, the Radeon VII performs better, not in recommended. Interesting. And lastly at 4K, yeah, I mean, you can do the math here. This thing's not designed for modern 4K titles. Obviously older 4K titles are going to be fine, but 55 FPS in recommended and 69 FPS in 4K for the performance settings. Hey, 69 FPS is quite playable at 4K, but me being as sweaty as I am, I wanted to see what 4K felt like to play, right? Because benchmarks are one thing, but for someone like me who's played a lot of this, let's find out, and I'll tell you, I'll give you a play-by-play to see if the experience is good. These are our settings here. We are in the balanced preset. We've got FSR 2.1 turned on. We can also set that to performance, which is the default for this preset for this GPU. All the texture quality settings are either low, medium, or high, but most of it is on low and medium. We'll start off with 1080p because that is the resolution that we're on now. You can see Radeon VII on a 4K panel. I'll apologize in advance for my performance while playing. First of all, I'm on a really awkward angle. I've got the monitor pointed at the camera, not towards me. I'm not on my usual mouse and keyboard, and on top of all of that, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't talked about this at all, and this is why we haven't been uploading much. I have a broken rib, so I need to manage your expectations right now of how terrible I'm going to be at playing this game right now. Yeah, that's the truth. FPS is quite good right now. It's around 140, 150. It's actually pretty good. It's blurry as though, but that's also because we're running with FSR on. Oh, I've got a mortar strike. Look at me go, guys. Kill streaks and all with no sound in hardcore shipment. I just pre-fire because I know where people are going to spawn. Because I've played a lot of this. This keyboard and setup feels really odd. Ugh. What I'm finding difficult in 1080p right now is with FSR, I can't really see anything. It's so blurry at a distance. Also, not hearing anything doesn't help. Okay. I mean, this is not too bad. Oh, that stupid Wilson thing. I know why people use that in hardcore. I've got a friend who uses one. You know who you are. Let's switch to 1440p quickly while we're still in game, just to get a bit of idea of performance so I don't have to play 3 rounds of COD. Frame rate has dropped a little bit. Man, this Wilson's still going hard. And I can actually hear the GPU spinning up now. You guys might be able to hear that. Wow, I am absolutely terrible at this. I apologize. My absolute scrubbery right now. Oop, I also have one of those. So we're seeing, what is it? We're seeing 100, around 100 and, I mean, it fluctuates a bit. I mean, Shipment is a map I play, so, you know, maybe not an excellent example, but, you know, 110 to 120 on average is not too bad. I saw the lowest I saw it dip to was around 104 FPS. So honestly, not too bad for this with FSR on. Okay. 4K, the GPU's really revving up. Oh, that's a team kill, my bad. We're seeing frame rates of about, oh, that's a teammate. Oh, look at that. Beautiful little triple kill. Around 80 to 90 frames per second. Oh no, I'm sorry, mate. That was an accident. I did get a chopper gunner. Haha, let's go. No sound, awkward angle, and I just got a chopper gunner. Chopper gunner, ladies and gents. Team killing. Oh, yeah. Team killing in hardcore with a chopper gunner like an absolute loser. Wow, guys. Just a bit of an update on this round. I'm doing pretty well, considering I have no sound. I've got another one now. Yeah, I don't know. Look at that. I mean, doing all right. No sound. It's pretty good. It dips well below 70. I mean, we lost, but I got 81 kills in like a round of COD with no sound on an awkward angle with a broken rib. So, you know, imagine how I usually play. What was the KD? Hey, I was still almost a 2-to-1 KD as well, so. You know, your boy's a little bit of a demon in COD. This guy was hacking, which let's just give him a accusation. He was hacking. All right, we are back to 1080p. We'll jump into a round of Plunder quads. I'm gonna play solo. This is on Al Mazrah, the Warzone map. So we're gonna see, I think, vastly different frame rates here, especially with the map being so vast and there being up to 120 players. Just trying to bait him a bit. Surely. Come on, guys. Oh, I'm being hunted. That's awesome. Get him with a little quick scope. Oh, no, I'm dead. Okay, this is gonna be a bit tougher. I feel like there's a bit more input lag in Warzone as compared to other modes, but the great thing about playing Plunder solo is I can just go and hunt people now. I can't see anything, it's really bad. The upscaling is not good with FSR at 1080p. It looks like nothing. I think he's there. Come on. Oh, you see, that's terrible. Not even a single kill on Plunder yet. Yeah, look at me getting pumped. Okay, I'm getting pumped because I can't see anything. So let's up the resolution. Hitting about 90 frames per second. My guess is these guys are gonna be in the same spot. And they are. Oh, my ping button is different. But we'll see if we can just get a cheeky headshot. Yeah, he's down. Oh! As you can tell in this game mode, I tend to snipe quite a lot. There you are. Downed him. He's gonna have his buddy up there too. Let's get up close and personal with no sound. I don't know, we're getting about between 90 and 100 with dips down to around 85. Let's switch to 4K. And if this plays well at 4K, I'll be very surprised. Ooh, now this is where the performance is tanking. We are only just hitting at 60 FPS now. I haven't even dropped yet. It is a lot clearer. There is a lot more to see. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna go the same spot because I really don't care about my stats anymore. I did have a pretty consistent 2.5 KD in Plunder, but you know, look at me just looking for an excuse to play COD in the middle of the day. Oh, this is really, really bad at 4K. Oh, let's go. That was pretty bad. Go down, go down. How did I miss my knife? I still killed him. From that testing and from me playing the game that I play the most with the Radeon VII, I found that rather interesting. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. The fact that at 1440p, it was still very playable, even in Warzone, despite the skill issue I have at the moment with everything that's going on with me. And I don't know, the input lag felt like it was a bit of an issue when playing in Plunder. I don't know if I was just imagining that, but it did feel a lot higher than usual. If you want to see us revisit GPUs, let us know what GPU you want to see us revisit down below in the comments. I'm keen to hear all your thoughts because this is pretty cool. This is pretty interesting. I forgot how loud the Radeon VII was as well, especially at 4K when you're really pumping it as hard as possible. It was just so loud. That's gonna do it. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek, and I hope you enjoyed this revisit of a GPU that, if I'm being honest, I kind of love how it looks. I kind of loved it when it came out, even though the performance was, it wasn't good, but I just had a bit of a soft spot for it because it was kind of, it shouldn't have been made. That's why I liked it. HBM memory on a GPU, like the Vega 64 and the Vega 56 both shared that with it as well. But for AMD to then do it again and not make it much better, I think is cool because it's just like, what are you doing? Look, I know it's a weird reason to like something, but I don't know. I just have a soft spot for the Radeon VII. I don't know what it is. Yep, it's weird. It's really weird.